Hello and welcome back to the Alicia Show. This is your host, Alicia, and I am so happy that you are here again for another episode. And today is a solo all about self reflection. And I just thought it was time for me to do that, to have a conversation about who I am, because this is important. And sometimes we don't take the time to actually sit and reflect on who the person that we are becoming or who we want to be in this life. And so before I even get into talking about that, I want to talk about where I came from and who I was born to, because I think that's really, really important, especially as I am growing a little girl who asks so many questions. She is so curious. And for that, I am super, super happy because it helps me to continue to grow. It helps me to continue to think about my life and to remember sometimes locked memories about certain people in my life. And so I am hugely grateful that she is here wanting to know where she came from because it's important. So if you've been a avid listener for quite some time, you know that I was born to immigrants. My mum is from Jamaica and my dad was raised in St. Vincent. And they both came over to the UK when they were teens. And so whilst I was growing up, it was always installed in me that I had to work harder and be smarter and fit in and be seen, but not always heard, and not to upset others because you never want to be seen as the aggressor. And so that's how I lived my life for so long. And I would often hear throughout my career and my life that, oh, you're not like the others. I don't see you as Black. And imagine hearing that with your own ears. Imagine hearing that you're not seen as Black, even though I am a darker shade of brown. But that's a whole different conversation for a different episode. And I would often look perplexed and ask further questions because it wasn't that I was trying not to be Black. It was just that I was doing what I was told to do to fit in. And so now, as I get older, I am starting to realize that I had compressed a lot of who I was to fit in, to navigate life, to climb the corporate ladder, to purchase my own property, to be a business owner. I had sacrificed part of my traditions and my culture for that. And so I'm really, really trying not to make that a pattern for my daughter. I want her to understand that, yes, it's important for her to be part of this world, but also it's really important that she stands for who she is at the core of her heart. And as one of her teachers, I want to be here to be able to teach her that. So last week was cultural week at her school, and all of the children got to come in outfits that represented their culture. And we represented Jamaica because my mum's not here. She doesn't get to be remembered as often as the people that are here do. And so my daughter represented that part of her heritage. And for me, that was such a proud moment because I knew that she would go in and talk about her nanny. And even though she didn't get to meet her, she gets to see her and she gets to be part of her culture. And that is so, so important to me. Another thing that was really important to me is that she went to a diverse school. And it's funny because I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who goes to a different school in the same kind of area that I am in. And we were having a conversation because although we want our children to go to a diverse school, they are still the minority in their classes. And we're wondering, where do all of the Black and brown children go to? And so that's important for me to actually investigate as well, because I want to make sure that as my daughter goes through her schooling, that she has different opportunities to learn about different cultures and so forth, but she also sees herself in others. That to me is foundational, and it's something that I didn't get throughout my career. I remember being the only Black person in different companies. And these were not small companies, these were companies of hundreds of people. And I would be the only person of color. I remember going to Christmas parties and we would come together and there would be hundreds of people there. And I would be the only person of color. Yes, that was years ago, but at the same time, like I just said, I am noticing that not much has really changed. Don't really see many Black or brown folk in high corporate roles. I didn't see that when I was there, and I don't see that now. I mean, I'm not in the corporate world, but I can Google. And so I'm still not seeing much change, which means when you do get a person of color in a higher ranking role, we feel the need to overcompensate, we overperform, we are made to feel like we have to overdeliver to make sure that our worth is seen. And again, I did that throughout all of my career until it got to a point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. I cannot do this for somebody else. But what really struck me was the fact that these behaviors that were happening over 20 years ago continue to happen through the industries now. And it's harmful. And one of the reasons why I'm super happy that I get to work for myself. And yes, sometimes it's extremely hard because I don't always have the same level of support that I had when I was in a corporate role, but that's life. And I'm willing to make that sacrifice to ensure that I am happy, because sometimes there's still a need for me to work through the trauma that I held within my body, which also reminds me that I have to take care of myself and my well-being, because there is only me. I can't have a sick day at the moment and be like, oh, Karen in accounts will look after that or will follow that up. No, the work will still be waiting for me when I am back. And so it's really important for me to ensure that I am well, but also to have a great system in place, right? And that ensures that when I do have oh shit moments in my business, that it isn't the be all and end all. We have things in structure to make sure that things are still operating as and when I need to take some time out. Working for myself also means that I get to choose who I work with, who I collaborate with, who I partner with, who I feel aligned with. You heard me mention in episode 118 that I walked away from a six-figure contract. And that was all down to integrity. That was me recognizing that I had the choice to either jump in, all in, and possibly not be happy whilst I delivered, or I could decline the offer and say this was not right for me. And yes, I had to grieve, like I also explained, but equally, it gave me such a boost when I really reflected on it and really recognized that I was not just chasing the money, I was also living in the person that I want to show up as in this world. So, for those of you who don't know, I am a holistic business strategist and a implementation coach. I work with project management. So I look at it from a holistic standpoint. I help people to launch their desires, that be their lifestyles or within their businesses, but I help them to get super clear on what they want. And then we start to integrate and implement the things that they have walked into existence. I help them to execute them and to make them real. And I love, love, love my work. I love it. I love project management. I love helping people to scope and then to really map out a plan and then to implement. It makes me happy to hold that space to ensure that people are able to find clarity, and to also know that they're not alone. And by taking a step away from what was my reality of a 9 to 5, a horrible commute, but I used to make it work, 3 trains, sometimes a bus and 3 trains, and then to sit in an office on the 44th floor, sometimes not leaving the office. And don't get me wrong, I loved my team. I loved the people that I worked with. I loved some of my work, but I didn't always like the industry. And so the fact that I get to merge my well-being practices with my project management experience, it just makes me so, so happy. So when you are looking at your own self-reflection, are you happy? Honestly, be honest with yourself. Are you happy? Sometimes it's really hard to answer that question, right? But sometimes we instantly know the answer. And sometimes we are just performing. And sometimes we are just going with the motions. And sometimes we are just listening to what other folk tell us that we should be doing. And we have pushed down any of our own feelings, our own desires, our own wishes, our own goals. We've pushed them right down because we feel like we have to do what we're told. And how is that serving you? I want you to honestly think and consider that. How is doing what you are told serving you? For me, it wasn't working. For me, I didn't want to feel burned out. I didn't want to feel drained. I didn't want to take on contracts that would take away from my health and my lifestyle. I don't want to, in the future, have to work for individuals or corporate clients that take me away from what my business stands for. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I am unique. I am unique because there isn't another Alicia in this world. And you are unique because there isn't another one of you in this world. But although our DNA is different, we still have some of the same elements because we still breathe the same. I have a brain like you, and I have a heart, and I have bones, and I have skin like you too, although we may be different skin tones and we have been taught differently and we have different beliefs, but we bleed the same. I recently did a podcast where we talked about my journey to motherhood. I was recording for another podcast host, which is also why I'm in this full reflection mood. And some of the questions that were presented to me again made me consider how Black people are perceived in this world. I'm always open and honest about being brought up in a single parent household. And I'm very proud that my mum made the decision to choose her children and herself and poured into them when relationships didn't work for various reasons. Seeing her struggle at times, but not wanting to share her struggles, made me recognize and understand that you come here and leave here alone, and nobody is responsible for your happiness once you get to a certain age. And so I was asked a number of questions that made me consciously think about the reasons why I was being asked, but also how Black people are perceived. So when the host said your husband enabled you to give up work financially because you didn't have the luxury of that choice had you been on your own, I had to put her straight and explain to her that I gave myself that luxury because I wanted that for myself. And I'm fortunate enough that I was able to do that. And I have no judgment to others who have to depend on their partners. But we have to stop making assumptions for other people. We have to let them tell their own stories. Maybe then we wouldn't be perplexed when we hear similar stories to our own in different communities and cultures. Both my husbands and I were brought up by our mothers, and we wanted my daughter to have us both. When I was asked how we make it equitable in our household, I was a little bit taken aback by this question. We are partners in parenting, in marriage, in business, in life. We split our parenting and household responsibilities equally, but we also take care of each other. And if one of us needs to do more, we do it because that's what we believe in. That's what we believe is important in our household, regardless of what we've seen growing up. This is what is important to us, especially as we are growing up, curious, smart, amazing little Black girl. It's important for us that she sees us working in partnership and not in conflict. Is partnerships always smooth sailing? No, but we continue to work on it. And when it isn't working, we communicate about what is not working, why it may not be working, and how we can resolve it. For us, this works really well. And I think the misconception is that if you come from a single parent background, then that's the path that could happen to you. And I'm here to say that it could happen to anybody. Life happens. So let's stop making it some sort of stigma and think about how we can continue to remind ourselves that this is a partnership. But without this partnership, things may fall back onto you. So you also need to be okay with being able to stand up on your own. When I was considering starting a family, I always remembered something that somebody dear to me said. And he said, be ready, don't lose yourself. And remember, once you have children, you will always be a mother. You cannot walk away from that responsibility easily. So I also want to say to those who have lost somebody, a parent, a child, a partner, I'm sending you so, so much love. To those of you who are going through your own journey, I send you love and healing. I'm here in my corner of the world trying to make small changes to lead into big changes. And I will continue to do this from a place of love and integrity. We are only here for a short time, but I want to make my legacy last. And sometimes this feels difficult to lean into when sometimes the world that we live in does not always see you. I see you. I truly do. And so sometimes when I revert back into people pleasing and I make myself small on purpose so that other people don't feel intimidated, it takes me back. My inner child starts hurting again. And this is why it's important for us to have these conversations as women, business owners, partners, mothers, caregivers, because when we don't feel aligned, then things don't happen around us. And that's why I always talk about leaning into your female cycle as well, because that has a major part of how you're feeling. And sometimes we forget that. Sometimes we continue to show up in our masculine energy. And sometimes we just need to really give ourselves some grace and think, oh, actually, this is where I am. So I'm going to retreat a little bit. So what I would love for you to do, and if you haven't done so already, then just make the time to look at where you may be in the moon cycle or in your own cycle, and think about some of the things that you don't have to do in this particular phase. Think about some of the things that you can leave to the next phase or you can delegate. And if you're like, Alicia, what the hell are you talking about? Don't forget, I have a digital planner that explains all of this. And actually, I also have a course. I have a course all about harnessing your female cycle to build your business, because it's so important. It's so important to try not to just continue to be that workhorse. I've said it so many times where I've said that often we leave a job and we become an entrepreneur, but we continue to show up like we did in our corporate job. And actually, no, now we are the CEO. We are the CEOs of our lives, and we can take control of how we're feeling and what we're doing. So this conversation was just a strong reminder to show up as you truly are. Some of us are really bold and we show up on social media daily and we are activists, and some of us are really quiet and empaths and we retreat in times of crises, and it takes us a lot of time to assess what is going on. And I put myself in that category. I feel overwhelmed with life sometimes. And sometimes, if you notice, I take time out. I take breaks from any kind of media because I cannot unsee what I've seen. And so sometimes I have to make time for me just to stop. One of the things that just came up is I remember going to see my mum and I cannot unsee that picture of her. So that was a huge lesson for me, because I wanted to see somebody who we lost earlier on in the year, but I couldn't see her in the way that she looked prior to her passing, because that wasn't her. So what I'm saying to you is, when you look in the mirror, do you see you? And are you happy with who you see? Because if you're not, it's time to make those changes to make yourself happy. You are the biggest investment. I say it all the time. You have to nurture yourself to nurture your business. You have to invest in yourself to invest in your business. What does that mean to you? That's the last question I'm leaving you with. Please let me know what that means to you. Send me a DM. All of my details are in the show notes. Take care for this week. Next week, I will be back. But until then, just remember you are loved. Take care for now. Bye-bye.